Hey everybody, it's Jim Bud, former senior patrol agent of the United States Border Patrol, whistleblower, immigrant rights activist, democracy defender, whatever you want to call me. And today, let's look, it is July 15th, 2025. This is kind of an impromptu video, as you can tell. My hair is actually kind of messed up. I actually like my hair more like this. It's actually cut in a mohawk in the back, you can kind of see. But usually when I do these videos, I slick it back. So I didn't have time to do it. And I don't really care. I actually kind of like my hair like this. Um, and Zoe is with me today, taking a nap on the desk. But this is kind of impromptu. So my friend John Kirk, who's a videographer, he did the documentary American Scar about how the Border Patrol has decimated the Tohono O'odham reservation out there and blown up the mountains to build a wall and stuff. If you get a chance to see it, you can see it. I think it's on YouTube, American Scar with John Kirk, Kurc. And he's a really good friend of mine. And he kind of has been documenting, what the Border Patrol and Immigration CBP have been doing to the environment out there and to the animals and stuff. But he also, because we're good friends, he pays attention to like the rape culture because he knows I'm really on that. Plus, he's in the Tucson sector for the Border Patrol. And the Tucson sector, as I call it, is the rapey sector because I have a ton of agents who have been charged and convicted of a lot of pedophiles and then serial rape, violent sexual assault of migrants, of women, a lot of women in the Tucson area, children in the Tucson area. And this is a major, major problem for Tucson Sector Border Patrol. And so they try and hide this. In fact, in 2023, and I need to research this because they passed a rule or a law within the I think it was the Arizona Supreme Court passed this. And I'll research it and I'll give you better information on it once I know. But essentially they passed this. It's not really a law, it's a rule. So in other words, it wouldn't have been passed if it's a rule, it's just brought down by the Supreme Court of the state. So it basically allows the courts to hide information of agents and law enforcement officers if the victims are minors in sexual assaults. So it's not just for law enforcement officers, but certainly it benefits especially the Border Patrol. So I wouldn't be surprised if I find out the Border Patrol helped push for this law. And I'll dig into that, like I said, and look at it later. So it's very hard to find these guys now in Tucson, especially if they're committing child sexual crimes because of this rule 123. And so John has been keeping an eye on it. There's a local reporter who investigates over there, and he's the one that clued us into this, that they had this law and they were hiding these cases from us, especially after I started talking about this back in, I think I came out about my rape in 2017, maybe 2019. And I've been researching this and bringing all these rape cases forward, and I have the database on all of it. So the reporter's name out of that Tucson area is Chorus. He has a really cool first name, Chorus, Chorus, and his last name is Nylander, Mylander. So if you want to know what's going on, he's the one that's writing the stories on this. He's the one that found the last guy, Efren Lopez Cornejo, the BORTAC agent who is sexually abusing his two daughters for 11 years and got off with lifetime probation. So this is out of a different county. Tucson Sector encompasses three different counties, at least three different counties that I know of, maybe even more, but border counties. And the last one with Efron, that was out of Pima County. And This one is going to be out of Cochise County. Cochise County makes a lot of money from Border Patrol. They get a lot of funds for Border Patrol. They work with them side by side now. They do chases of migrant vehicles. They arrest migrants. They do all sorts of stuff. And so they get millions and millions and millions. And the sheriff in Cochise County loves the Border Patrol so much he wishes he was a Border Patrol agent, but he's not. But he will cover up for them. I've watched them cover up for murders. I've done casework on that. The last one that was Carmelo Cruz Marcos. The sheriffs helped cover up a shooting of a migrant over there, and they worked with the Border Patrol and the illegal critical incident teams on that case, knowing full well that they were going to be banned within months and that they were illegal. Just it's disgusting. So this case, it slipped past me. The reason why it slipped past me, I think, is because it was at the end, it was announced. I saw Course came out with a Course Nylander came out talking about it at the end of June. That was right around my birthday. And I was going through some kind of stuff with the confirmation hearings with Rodney Scott, and a Democratic senator, Senator Wyden, decided to talk about my sexual assault, and without even telling me, and also without notifying me or requesting permission. And then he didn't even use my name. And then he's out there and let Rodney Scott say that I have a wild imagination about this. Well, here's another example of my wild imagination, y'all. Here we go. Okay. So this guy, he got past me because I was taking some time off. But at any rate, this guy's name is Bart, B-A-R-T, Conrad Yeager, Y-A-G-E-R. And Border Patrol Agent Yeager, as you can tell, has an issue with steroids. I mean, come on, man. See, this is the thing in the Border Patrol. They won't drug test you unless they have a cause to drug test you. You get a drug test when you first enter, but they won't drug test you after that. I hold 6 years. I never got drug tested until I came forward and started saying, y'all are corrupt and this and that. Then they drug tested me like the last week I was leaving. And of course I passed because I'm not an idiot. But they won't drug test these guys, especially for steroids. And this is illegal. Steroids are illegal unless you have a doctor prescription. I have seen the Border Patrol get rid of a BORTAC agent who was on roids because he was having roid rage. So they will do it if they want to get rid of you. They could have gotten rid of this guy, could have gotten rid of this guy for quite a while. And so he has 17 charges. These are just allegations. He has not been proven guilty yet. He has not pleaded guilty to anything. So these are all allegations. 17 charges of apparently possible sex with a minor, but also he was trafficking women and apparently minors as well. It insinuates that he was basically a pimp. Yeah. And then there's 2 and pandering charges. So I guess he's making him beg for money. And then he's also, the allegations is that he also was doing this while claiming that he was working at the Border Patrol at this checkpoint or over here transporting somebody or doing this, but he was really doing this stuff and not actually working. Sometimes he was at his home in Wilcox. So he has 17 counts of sex trafficking and pandering and 2 counts of defrauding the government for claiming he was working and taking money, and he's not. What I want to tell you first about this guy is he's former Marine. Very proud of that. And he also spends a lot of time, I have all his videos. He has a YouTube channel. Has a lot of videos. It used to be about how to get women, and then he erased them all, apparently. Maybe I'll be able to find those. I don't know. But mostly his YouTube channel is him being naked. I'll show you a picture of him. He's always like has his shirt off and is showing his man nipples and all this other stuff. and the veins and shit going. Ugh, yeah. Anyhow, this guy is so roided up. It's not even funny. And he goes outside and walks around Tucson recording himself talking about these things. And his YouTube channel is about how to be a man. He talks about his values of life. He talks about one video. I was going to show you the videos, but I really don't want to give him any more attention than necessary. You can go look at him if you want. He has 16 followers, so yeah. He did one video about disability and food stamps and how they make you weak. He says in that video that those who claim that they're disabled from the military, the veterans that are claiming that they're disabled because he's met people who have faked those injuries. He believes are faking those injuries. He says that military veterans are mostly faking their injuries. Pretty good for a former Marine, huh? I would say maybe he's a former Marine that didn't see much action. I don't know. Maybe he did, but at any rate, he says that they are basically trading their masculinity for free money. Okay. And that a man should not choose to be a victim, and that when you take free money, food stamps, and welfare, you're making yourself a victim. He says men who do this also let women walk all over them. And that as a man, it's your responsibility to be in charge of your children and your woman. People who take food stamps and Section 8 housing are slaves. That's what he said. And the people who need these benefits are basically victims, is what he says. So I think it says a lot to what kind of things this man thinks and why he thinks these things. But let me tell you, I don't know how big of a victim it makes you, but it certainly makes you a big old fucking, what's the appropriate word? I mean, to offend him, I would call him a pussy, but that's anti-feminist. So I would say that using children to make money off of them and forcing them into sex, if he did do this, if the allegations are true, I would say that that makes you a really big piece of shit. How about that? Or a fucking loser who should be in jail the rest of his fucking life if these prove out to be true. How about that? Okay. So, and you're going to be and you are actually, quite honestly, you yourself, Bart, you've been living off of the government dole for how long? You've been in the military, you've been in the border patrol, and apparently you don't show up to work, is the accusation. Oh, Bart. Just like your bosses, you project out your criminality and your bullshit on everybody. This is who he is. This is what he thinks about. And these are the types of people that the United States Border Patrol is hiring to bring to your communities, to be in LA, to be in Tucson, to live in Wilcox. And how long has this been going on? How long has this been going on? Well, it says that the investigation in Bart Conrad Yeager was going on between August 2023 and into last year. So this has been going on for a couple of years now. So they've investigated this for over 2 years, and he's just now been arrested. Last June he was arrested. Of course, he's going to plead not guilty. He's going to make these victims come forward and actually tell their stories, because the chances are that most of the victims will not come forward. He and other Border Patrol agents will likely threaten these victims. And at the same time, once again, the victims probably won't want to go to every hearing. And The district attorneys will tell the victims, you don't have to show up for every hearing. Don't worry about it. And that is when they will then make deals with Mr. Yeager's attorney, who will ask them to drop the majority of charges. So he could actually see the majority of these sex charges drop, just like we saw in the Efron Cornejo case. Just like we've seen in a lot of other cases that I went through in my other videos. The chances of it being dropped are pretty good. He might end up just with pleading guilty to the fraud charges to the government, and that's all he'll get. Okay, so the chances that he's going to go to jail for this are not very good. Even, I mean, just the chances that he was arrested, look how long it took him to do that. Look how long it took him to do that. And the reasons why they probably had to finally arrest him is because the victims are like, they have to have pretty good evidence on this guy if they're going to bring charges, quite honestly. And they would do that for anybody, but especially for a cop, especially for a border patrol agent, especially in Cochise County, Arizona. And so they have to really do their homework. I don't know that it necessarily takes 2 years to study, 3 years to study, whatever, however long this took, but at any rate, I would have to see the whole case to judge it. And so far, we don't have access to that. We'll have to wait for the court cases. And this could be another 5 to 10 years, to be honest with you. This is just beginning for these victims. The courts will drag this out. His attorneys will drag this out. And then they eventually end up to these ridiculous charges. Kind of like how Michael Matsky, the former president of El Centro's Border Patrol Union, the entire sector El Centro. I mean, that man, I got him on video putting his gun in his mouth and threatening his girlfriend and putting the gun to her face. And like, he got away with vandalism charges. I mean, seriously. So you should expect him to get away with this. Being that the press has now clued in on it, being that I'm going to talk about it, obviously, and put this video out, maybe the judges might be a little bit more lenient, but every single time this man has a hearing, every single time the district attorney, the assistant district attorney calls his attorney or sends emails to each other, and the judge, they're all going to be talking about what they can do to get rid of this case. Okay. And if the victims can't last as long as Bart can, then it will disappear. And sometimes they don't even give you a reason why. They just say, in the interest of justice, we've decided to close this case. Again, these are just allegations, and we'll have to wait and see. But these are the people that they are bringing to your community. And these are the people that Tucson Sector just loves to hire and just loves to keep in their employment. And the reason why I wanted to do this quick video is it relates to the chiefs. So when you ask what kind of people the U.S. Border Patrol is hiring and why these people always get in, and why the Border Patrol and CBP's response is always, and you'll see it at the end of Chorus's reporting every time, because they have to ask the agencies, do you have a response to this? And the response is always, this does not represent the fine men and women of the U.S. Border Patrol and CBP who dedicate their lives and work heroically, and right? And they'll say, this is just an allegation and hasn't been proven. That's true. That's true. It is. It gets a little tired. It gets a little old seeing this after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents have been arrested for these things. And most of them get away with it, right? So when you ask, how is it and who is it that they're hiring and why are they hiring these people that are like this? I want you to look at the chiefs, and I'm just going to name I'm going to name 4 chiefs. Well, the reason why these men are like this in the Border Patrol, and the reason why they're hired, is because of chiefs like Deputy Chief of the Border Patrol, #2 guy in charge, recently, few years, forced to leave, forced to resign, was told by CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, the internal investigators for this, hey, we're about to bring up charges on you. You might want to, we're investigating this. It's getting down to it. And the women aren't giving up. The women are coming after you. Your victims are coming after you. The women that have alleged these allegations against you, you might want to give up. You might want to retire so that you can save your retirement. And that's what he did. Okay. Same thing with Tony Barker Jr. Very high ranking chief, was expected to be the next chief of the entire US Border Patrol. Same thing, right? Warned so he didn't get charged, so he could keep his retirement. And then what happens? The Border Patrol never talks about it again. Why? Because he was never charged. It was an allegation. And once he's gone, because the victims were female agents and they didn't charge criminal charges, maybe they'll get to civilly sue the Border Patrol. But I guarantee you the courts are going to say, well, that wasn't part of his job description. So no, the Border Patrol is not responsible. And then they'll have to sue their alleged abuser. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. But the two chiefs I really want to focus on are two chiefs that have no allegations against them that I'm aware of. But they're chiefs that allow this shit to go on. And the first chief is former chief of the Border Patrol, Rodney Scott. Rodney Scott, who is now the commissioner of CBP, Customs and Border Protection, which he has no right to be. He is just there because he refused to respond to the January 6th insurrection with his men that he had just blocks down the street so that Donald Trump could, try and overthrow and overturn the election. He did that for Trump. So Trump rewarded him with the appointment to commissioner of CBP now under the second administration of Trump. He has no business being there. Man is one of the most uneducated chiefs I've ever seen in my life. I believe he just has a high school diploma. Maybe he had a few classes as an agent, but that man is a nightmare. That man is a nightmare. Let me remind you that when he was chief of San Diego Sector, just happened to be some unknown guys that ran through the migrant camps for the caravans there and told everybody that CBP was going to accept women and children for asylum, which caused the women and children to come to San Ysidro Port of Entry and cross the gully and try and get across because they thought they were going to get asylum. But guess who had a truck full of riot gear and tear gas and pepper spray and all that shit and pepper balls? The agents just happened to be sitting on the other side of the fence at the ready with all their gear on and started shooting at them as they started coming down to the gully. That was Rodney Scott. Rodney Scott claimed his agents were injured by rocks. No proof of that. None whatsoever. He provided no proof of that. I have testimony from multiple people who watched the Border Patrol gear up and were ready way beforehand. Way before they started crossing. Rodney Scott is also the one who used the illegal and criminal and secret critical incident teams of the Border Patrol to cover up and obstruct justice, to erase and get rid of video of the beating and killing of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas in 2010. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which is a commission between North America, Central America, and South America, and still matters to the United States and that the United States still belongs to, just found that Rodney Scott and his critical incident team that he used to cover up Anastasio's killing was guilty of that, of using an illegal secret cover-up team to obstruct justice and deny him and his family any kind of justice or rights. Rodney Scott also was responsible as a chief down here at San Diego Sector for helping stall the investigation into his critical incident team manager and supervisor, Armando Gonzalez, also my classmate. I talk a lot about him in the book. Armando Gonzalez was filming women in the critical incident team bathroom as they used the restroom, female Border Patrol agents, janitors, female janitors that cleaned the building at night, and also a female FBI agent who stated that Rodney Scott and the other chiefs knew exactly what Armando was doing and let him get away with it. And when they came forward to complain, it was Chief Scott, along with the other chiefs at San Diego Sector, who stalled the investigation so that he could get rid of evidence. FBI victim, the FBI agent said, everybody, including San Diego PD, San Diego Sheriff's, FBI, everybody knows that that team's illegal. And that everybody knew that those team members on the critical incident team, including Supervisor Armando Gonzalez, were allowed to do whatever the fuck they wanted to, as long as they didn't get caught. Rodney Scott is the chief who, when Valeria Monique Tachkin Alvarado, a United States citizen, was leaving an apartment and was trying to walk away when unmarked and ununiformed Border Patrol agents came and knocked on a door that she was with her boyfriend. They were looking for her boyfriend, and she left because she's a Latina. She was a Latina who lived down here and knows not to fuck with Border Patrol. And she went to get in her car, and an agent stood in front of her car. And when she was trying to leave, he put himself in front of her car and jumped on her hood as she was trying to exit. And he put at least 10 bullets in her body. She was a mother of 5. Her crime? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There were witnesses at the scene who said that he put himself on her car and she was just trying to exit. She had nothing to do with any of this. She didn't want anything to do with any of this. Is saying, one witness at least was recorded as saying, and I have his testimony, that the Border Patrol agents came and put them in the backs of cars and would not let the Chula Vista Police Department investigate it. And the Chula Vista police were like, you need to let them out of the back of the car. You can't do that to people. That was not the critical incident team that showed up at that time. I know this because I'm friends with former critical incident team people. It was actually my old unit. They had, so Scott, Chief Scott at the time, could not call the cover-up teams in because they were off doing something else. I think they were at a barbecue or something, is what they said, if I remember correctly. So he had he had my old unit, the sector intelligence unit, come down and grab the witnesses from the Tachkin killing and get rid of them. And that case went nowhere. They threatened them well enough that they shut up. Okay. That's what Chief Scott does. Chief Scott regularly used these illegal cover-up teams to cover up sexual assaults, sexual abuse. He used them to cover up agent use of force crimes, agents abusing use of force. And now he's been rewarded as the head of CBP. Okay. That's why they hire these people. They look at somebody like Border Patrol Agent Yeager and go, that's a fine looking agent right there. They don't care that he's on steroids. They don't care what he does as long as he doesn't get caught, okay, with a lot of evidence, right? Because they have all these other layers. They have the cover-up teams, then they have the district attorneys that work with them, that put them through all these drug and alcohol programs and all this other shit when the victims don't want to come down and sit for every hearing. And then they end up getting off with these light charges. They wear the victims down. They allow the attorneys to extend these cases 2, 3, 5, 10 years. So the victims just give up. Okay. Ronnie Scott is guilty of all this. But I was looking also, I wondered who his deputy was, because I thought it was kind of odd that they would put a Border Patrol agent in charge of CBP. We have had that a few times, but generally it's got to be a highly educated Border Patrol agent that does that, not a schmuck like Rodney Scott, who's like one of the biggest, most corrupt Border Patrol agents. And when I say corrupt, I'm talking about covering up things. I'm not saying he's taking money. I don't have any evidence of that. He just covers up for agents. That's why the agents love him. They absolutely love him. There's nothing a Border Patrol agent could do that he will not cover up for, because that is what honor first means in the Border Patrol to these guys. Okay. It's not about the law. It's not about the Constitution. Okay. It's not about any of that. It's just about the Border Patrol. Okay. They think that they're godly, pretty much. So I'm like, are they trying to turn CBP into the Border Patrol? And I say this because when we talk about the 3 different immigration enforcement agencies, ICE, Border Patrol, CBP, ICE is very similar to Border Patrol. And that is because Border Patrol designed ICE. And that is because the people who were the managers and people who go into that and control ICE are typically ex-Border Patrol agents, okay? So ICE and Border Patrol are literally pretty much the same thing. They have always been at odds with CBP or Customs because they view Border Patrol and ICE view themselves as the people who keep people out. And they view CBP, the idea of customs and immigration at the ports, are the people who let people in. And they feel, Border Patrol and ICE feel, that CBP is weak. CBP has, because they're at the ports, because they're checking fruits and vegetables, because they're dealing with insects and all sorts of trade and all that, they have a lot of people with a lot of education. They have people with PhDs, masters, they have doctors, they have all sorts of people, very highly skilled people. Those aren't necessarily the people you're seeing at the ports. They do have brutality, just like the Border Patrol. The agents themselves can be just as bad as the Border Patrol, but they tend to be a little bit more professional. And they do have parts of their services that are extremely professional and well managed as well. That's not to say that they do a great job on everything, but they are, at least, they are not the bottom feeders, quite honestly, that the Border Patrol and ICE are. Let's put it that way. But I've long felt that the Border Patrol is trying to take over CBP because they do not feel that they're violent enough. They do not feel, they feel that, like, they shouldn't be letting anybody in. This is the goal of the Border Patrol and ICE, is to shut the asylum system. And CBP and asylum officers are the asylum system, okay? So I was wondering, who is Rodney Scott's deputy? And I happened to be looking at this yesterday, and when I was walking the dogs this morning, this got me thinking about all this and how these guys keep staying in there, and how they keep, they can commit these crimes for years and years and years and never be found out. And then it dawned on me, it is to the chiefs, and it's not even the chiefs that are necessarily like sexually abusing themselves or corrupt themselves. It's these chiefs that will cover up for the agents who are. So the current acting deputy chief of CBP is Chief John Modlin, Modlin, Modlin. Modlin is now the acting deputy commissioner. I think it's important that they're both white. I'll say that. The U.S. Border Patrol is well over 50% Latino. And this is what you see. This is what you see a lot in management. I don't know why the Latinos won't revolt, but I know they did in the 70s. I remember reading an article that, like, in the 60s or 70s, some came forward and said, we're not in management. like, were represented, in the agency. And there is beef with Rodney Scott, because Rodney Scott really makes sure that very few Latinos get in, and the ones he chooses are like his deputy chief, Raul Ortiz, who then became the chief after him. They're chiefs with very little respect in the Border Patrol, because to be a Latino in the Border Patrol, you have to hate yourself. Let's be honest about it. And they just don't get represented. They will not get the high ranks that the white male agents will get, for sure. The thing you need to know about Chief Maudlin is that Chief Maudlin was the chief of the rapey sector for the last 4 years. Yeah. And he never came out and said, we got to do something about this. We got too many agents that are raping our female agents. We got too many agents that are raping children. We got too many agents that are involved in sex trafficking. No, Maudlin never said that. Maudlin just said honor first. They're innocent until proven guilty. What? And even then, it's going to be like, yeah, they still probably were lying. People just hate Border Patrol agents and this and that. That's the belief in the Border Patrol, is that most of these victims are just lying, and they target the Border Patrol agents because they want their money. Like, you ever get any money from any of this shit? Like, yeah, can ever really sue the Border Patrol and get any kind of restitution for any of this? Doesn't happen. Okay. So let's look at who Maudlin, he was there from 2020 to 2024. So let's look at the agents who were arrested under Maudlin, okay, while he was there. So what do we say? He was there from 2020 to 2024, just recently. So we'll say like the beginning of 2025, basically. So Efren, I'm going to count Efren Lopez Cornejo, because Maudlin was still chief at the time. So while this new acting deputy commissioner of CBP, John Maudlin, he was in charge when Efren Cornejo was raping his daughters and was arrested. He was also in charge while Bart Conrad Yeager was allegedly committing these crimes. Okay, who else? Let's see. Oh, Stephen Charles Holmes. 2019. He was convicted on 11 counts of serial rape and strangulation. He was arrested in 2019, but because of COVID, he was allowed, and because he was a Border Patrol agent, he was allowed, his bond was changed so that he could get out by Republican Judge Kimberly Ortiz, who's now been appointed by the Republican governor, former Republican governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, to the Pima County Superior Court. So she was rewarded for that. And a month after she got her promotion, the guy that she let out, Stephen Charles Holmes, and who was allowed to go back and work at the Border Patrol while he waited for his hearings for multiple charges of sexual assault and strangulation, he offended again. Okay. So he finally got sentenced. Let's see, who else? Oh, Dana Arn Thornhill. While Chief John Maudlin was the chief of Tucson Sector, he had Border Patrol agent Dana R. Thornhill as his chaplain for the whole sector. The interesting thing about Thornhill was that he was hired 17 years prior with already having an arrest record for sexually assaulting a child when he was 14 years old. Oddly enough, he continued on raping and producing child pornography, including to rape his own daughters, and then also use his position to have access to children. This chief, John Maudlin, his chief, refused to release any kind of complaints that may have been filed by migrants or children within his custody that perhaps Dana Thornhill abused. Who else? Oh, John Joseph Daly III, supervisory border patrol agent. He was finally arrested in August 2021 after he had been retired. So perhaps he wasn't an agent at the time, but Maudlin was the chief at the time when this man was arrested, and Chief Maudlin had nothing to say about this. So as you can see, Chief Maudlin himself has been around for a lot of Border Patrol agents being arrested in his sector. That's just the tip of the iceberg. These are just the guys I know about. There's lots of guys who were charged with things and then ended up, the victims gave up and walked away, and they still stay Border Patrol agents. So when you ask yourself, how is it that these agents, how is it that they get hired? Well, they get hired because the Border Patrol nowadays, they use outside private investigators to do their background checks. Their background checks aren't done by the government anymore like it was in my day. And when they do that, then that gives them plausible deniability to say, well, I didn't know that our chaplain had a prior arrest when he was 14 years old for sexually assaulting a child. So we see this a lot where, even Stephen Charles Holmes, he actually had a Department of Homeland Security Office of Investigator General investigation going on during his hiring process. He had complaints during his hiring process, and they still hired him. Okay. There is something really bad going on in Tucson sector. And it is not a coincidence that both Chief Scott and Chief Maudlin, Chief Scott had a career in Arizona early on. It's not happenstance that Maudlin gets chosen for this. What they are doing, if I was a CBP officer, and certainly a CBP officer of high rank, I would be pissed beyond belief that they went outside my agency and pulled in Border Patrol agents. We don't have the same training they do. Not in the least. We don't know anything about trade. We don't know anything about, very little about fake docs. We get a little bit of classes on that. We're mostly dealing with people who are circumventing the legal way at the ports where the CBP officers are to sneak across because they can't get across. So we catch them in the act, okay? We don't need to really know all that other stuff unless we're at the checkpoints. Then you need to know a little bit. So CBP officers, back in my day, they were customs and immigration inspectors. That's who I called when I had somebody with a document that I needed to check, because they knew, and I would say, I need to talk to your best document person you have on duty right now. They know more about that kind of stuff. Border Patrol agents don't know shit about that. They know how to do cover-ups. They know how to run secret and illegal cover-up teams. They know how to keep the press from looking into their agents in Tucson sector who are out apparently sexually assaulting and raping anybody they can find. And now, if this is true with Border Patrol agent Yeager pimping, these are the people that they say are the most honorable. These are the people that they say are just following orders. It's why men in the Border Patrol don't say honor first. They say on her first, okay? I don't know how many more of these stories we got to do before somebody's going to investigate this. I know that obviously right now it's not going to be done. I would like the actual reporters instead of me, just the activist, the former agent talking about this. I would really like to stop talking about this. I would like somebody to take this over for me so I don't have to talk about it anymore. But I can't tell you when that's going to happen. So until then, I'll keep stalking them. Fortunately, it appears right now that Border Patrol agent Yeager is in custody. Let's hope he stays that way. I'll let you know. All right. I'll give you updates as I get them. Thanks.